Future Proof Mzansi, a podcast where we discuss how consumer behavior shapes our marketing plans. I'm Senna, and as usual, I'm joined by my colleague Stacey to discuss all things brand and marketing. Hi, Stace.
Hey Senna, it is so good to be back in the virtual studio with you, and I'm excited about this episode because we're speaking to one of South Africa's most creative and innovative brands. They're known for their bold, humorous, culturally relevant campaigns. They've become synonymous with social commentary, witty humor, and pushing the boundaries both locally and abroad.
And I'm sure our listeners can guess that we can only be talking about Nando's. And I'm thrilled to welcome their marketing director, Jessica Wheeler, today. Jessica has over 15 years experience in the marketing and advertising industry. And before Nando, she was managing director of a leading South African advertising agency. Prior to that, she spent years honing her strategic skills at a top-tier global agency brand. Jessica's work is rooted in cultural intelligence, creative bravery, and the belief that brands have a responsibility to show up with meaning and a little spice. Welcome, Jessica. It's an honor to have you join us on Future Proof Mzansi.
Thank you. What nice things you say about me. I always feel like you're really talking about me, but thank you.
It's all true, though, girl, so take it in.
Jess, before we get into the kind of main discussion, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you came to work at one of South Africa's most iconic brands?
Yeah, I mean, it's accidentally, I think, as most great things happen, right? So I've always been in the ad game. So started there when I was fresh out of school, and then kind of just did a bit of this and a bit of that, and made it my mission to know as much as possible about everything when it comes to advertising and comms. And then kind of landed up in strategy just by virtue of the fact that I was running out of things to do, and strategy was the place where I could kind of do a bit of everything. And then, in true post-COVID style, one day I was just like, yeah, I'm done. I quit. I'm done. I'm exhausted. I don't feel like I'm feeding my soul anymore. I was stuck in spreadsheets and nonsense, and so I quit. And I took 6 months of watching Netflix and eating chips. And then this thing just happened. So it completely accidentally, but I'm sure by universal design somehow landed up with the best job in the world.
Oh, that is so iconic.
Yeah. I love it. It actually sounds a little bit like you, Senna.
It does sound like me. It's like my career journey. Sit and watch Netflix. I did it for a year. But anyway, it works, I guess.
It works. You got to shut some doors for other ones to open that you didn't realize were there, right?
Jessica, I think I love what you said about having one of the best jobs in the world, because I can imagine. I mean, your brand screams creativity, fun. So let's get into Nando's. The brand is known for its sharp wits and social commentary, but I want you to tell us, how do you decide when to be playful versus when do you take a stand on issues?
It kind of speaks to that balance between brand personality and brand responsibility. Which are two things that you've got to balance, particularly with a brand with a reputation like Nando's. It's a very thin line to walk, and I think when in doubt, we always fall back onto our values. So we know if there are issues that directly push up against our values or that feed into our values, those are the ones that we need to tackle. I think being controversial for controversy's sake, or just for shock value, it's tacky, right? And it's something we would never do. So because values are, I cannot stress so much how deep the values are embedded in this business. It's really easy to make those decisions and to make sure that, if we are being playful about something, or if we are taking a stab at something, it's embedded in our values or deeply affects our values. So we have the right and the history and the legacy of consistently demonstrating those things. So we land up being able to be controversial and use humor almost as a way to break tension. We would never go and, poke in a negative way. We find a really good way to balance our personality and our responsibility as a brand, only because we've been doing it for 38 years. So you kind of build up the chops, right? And you build up the right to be able to do those things.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about the values, because really, if you get those right, then they can sort of be this guiding light of how you make decisions and how you're able to make decisions. So, speaking of values, I want to speak about the partnerships that you have with artists, designers, and creatives. And I want to understand how those partnerships play or influence your brand story.
So they're integral to our brand story, right? And I think, the great thing about Nando's, and I think the thing that's most often underappreciated, is that these are not marketing things. These are things that are in the bones of the business, right? So our commitment to local creativity, it is not just a sponsorship arm of the marketing team. It's part of our restaurant build. It's part of the way we design our restaurants. It's part of our global supply chain. It's part of all these things because it's in the bone. So it's not something we do on the side. So it's really important to us. And again, speaking about values, supporting creativity is one of our values, because we really do believe that creativity is going to change the world, right? And not just from a marketing point of view. So it's in there. So it doesn't add to the brand story. It is the brand. It's part of it. So it just becomes a natural extension.
Yeah, I love that. And it is always, it does something in our hearts, I think, to see brands supporting and working alongside local artists and designers and creatives. There's something about the kind of the process of being together in this that really stands out. So do love that. But the Nando's voice has evolved over time, particularly with shifts in consumer expectations and digital platforms. Tell me a bit about that.
So I think, our tone of voice has always remained consistent. It's something that we're really proud of. I think how it shows up and the context in which it shows up naturally changes over time. I think, we live in a world now where, because of the proliferation of digital channels and the fact that you've got to just have this, really quick, short opportunity to get somebody's attention, that tone may show up in different ways. So it may feel like it changes over time. So right now it's got to be a lot shorter, snappier, and we don't have time for long layered stories that, that build over time. So it's always remained the same. It's just, it changes depending what that channel is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, I mean, top of mind was you guys just respond to things so quickly, right? And I know we're going to get into that in a moment, but I'd love to know what has been your favorite campaign that Nando's has run ever.
I really believe that the diversity campaign that we ran was obviously a piece of video that tackled xenophobia at a time that it was really contextually relevant. It was a societal issue that was really, pretty nasty in the public realm. But again, it pushed up against our values of everyone is welcome and of diversity. So, we had the opportunity to have a point of view on it. And I think the way that the team brought that story to life in a way that it was humorous, it did push the line in certain instances, but it was just celebrated because it was true at the end of it. There was a human truth there that, we can sit in a country like South Africa that has the most amazing diversity, but none of us are actually, we're not the OGs. None of the people on this call are, so it was just brought to life in a really, really great way. I think, what it did for the brand was just help cement, some of those values and some of those points of view that we love everybody, we accept everybody, and makes us better. It doesn't tear us apart. So just for that, it was just an amazing, piece of work from a positioning point of view for the brand.
Oh, I love it. It's kind of pulling people along for this task of nation building, and big brand can do that. They have the resources to do it. So it's so refreshing when brands choose to take a stand in support of issues that will work for our country, alongside obviously the task of building brands. So thanks.
Yeah. And Stacey and I have spoken about this quite often on this platform. We were part of the team that launched the flagship Brand Inclusion Index study. And we found that South African consumers felt that brands don't do enough to take a stand and be part of a national solution. But I want to hear about the process in just, jumping onto or making decisions very quickly on something that's topical, that's relevant. How do you do that so quickly?
Everybody always assumes there's this like amazing process and a war room of some kind with like weird screens and whatever. And it's not. It happens on WhatsApp channels mostly. And there, I think at any given point, there's 3 or 4 WhatsApp channels going, right? And with different people in them for good reason, because I think, those kind of opportunities there are, with social media, there's 10,000 a day you could do, and it would be exhausted. It would just be all consuming. And, the benefit of having different people in different channels speaking about the same thing is that you get all those diverse points of view and opinions. Social media can be quite divisive. And it's important that there isn't one filter of, okay, well, this sounds like something we should jump onto. Well, let me go and ask somebody who doesn't even work in social media or marketing, if this is something that they care about, and that they believe we should have a point of view about. So it is messy. It's generally late at night. It can be quite obstructive to things like sleep and all sorts of other things. But you've got to also pick your battles. And I think we have even become a lot more considered about the things that we jump onto. South Africa, despite some of the hideous narrative that lives online, has got a lot of good things to celebrate. But when you go through a year when it feels like all we're talking about is the Springboks winning, eventually somebody's got to be the bearer of bad news and say, okay, guys, I think we're done this one. Let's sit out the next one, because the last 6 things we've spoken about have been about rugby games. There's a lot more out there. So it is messy. It's not coordinated. It takes a good chunk of time, but when it works, it's absolutely worth the effort.
I just feel so seen, but that WhatsApp group chatting, I'm like at the WhatsApp group popping off, because the scene in my mind is just so funny. Thank you for that. But also, I want to comment on this thing of being virality or chasing a trend and being more considered about that. I think that is such an important point to make, because we're operating in a context where something that's topical today literally doesn't matter in a week, especially with like the younger generation and the Gen Zs and everybody being chronically online. But I imagine in instances like that, you have to rely quite a bit on your agency partners and having huge trust in them. So what makes a truly great client agency relationship, and how then do you go about nurturing that?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is not lost on me that obviously we've just, refreshed most of our agency partners literally in the last few weeks, and not for lack of partnership. I think client agency partnerships are one of the most important things that keep us sane sitting here, in the marketing team. It helps hugely to have people on the end of a WhatsApp or on the end of a phone or whatever that have skin in the game and that are as invested as you are. I mean, I keep joking about it, but I'm saying we put the cult into culture here, right? We live and breathe this brand, and not because it's the most amazing place to work, but because we truly believe in the things that we do, and we love what we do, and we have so much fun, and we need partners that echo that. Those partnerships can make the difference between great work and average work. If you feel like you've got somebody you can just pick up the phone and bounce something off of, or who's bringing all sorts of weird random things our way, just feels like it's invested. So it's absolutely important, because they are an extension of the team. We have a relatively small team here, and let me assure you that the communications or the external comms part of this brand is this much. There's a whole bunch of other things that we have to work on. So we simply can't afford to worry about comms all day, every day. There's a whole bunch of other things. So it helps to know that there are people out there in the world, not drinking the Kool-Aid consistently for 9 hours a day, that may have a different point of view or a different perspective, or are closer to our customers than we may be, because, we're sitting doing pricing and all sorts of other fun things.
What does that mean, Jess, out there in the world?
Well, I think closer to customers, right? Just being out there in culture, in customers' lives, being a customer themselves. It is, as much as you can try from a marketing point of view, we always want to spend more time with customers and in culture. But the truth is that we spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day in the Nando's world. And you can get a little bit, blindsided by that and kind of obsessed about the things that we care about rather than spending more time outside to worry about the things that customers care about. So you've got to have a foot in each. And the best way to do that is to have agency partners that can be that strong voice. Because then in the middle, we're going to have this amazing, chaotic, magical explosion of where the things the brand cares about and the things the customers care about can meet. But you've got to have a foot in both, and you simply can't as a marketing team.
Yeah, and I would probably even extend it to say, so the brand team, the customers, and then South Africa as a whole. And it sounds as though you're talking about the power of diversity in your agency partners in terms of them being on the ground. So I love that, and it kind of links a little bit with what I was going to ask, but I feel like you've actually already answered it, which is, tell me about that internal culture at Nando's. How do you get to that point of creativity and experimentation? There seems to be this joy and curiosity. Like, what are you guys doing to get at that?
Yeah, it's again, it's 38 years of doing it, right? So it's not something you just arrive and it's okay. Well, it's Creativity Tuesdays for 3 hours. We don't do that kind of stuff. Creativity, it's in the bones, right? So it doesn't just sit in the marketing team. It sits everywhere, and it's everybody's prerogative. And we're back at the office full time because we know we're at our best when everybody is here, and you can literally feel it in the building. That you can interact with somebody from supply chain or finance, or somebody sitting in the learning and development team, and you can bounce things off of each other. We have a very open policy. Marketing is everybody's business at Nando's because the brand is everybody's business. We don't have there's the business plan and then here's the brand plan. It's the same thing, so it's important that the guys that sit in, the talent team have as much voice about how this brand shows up, and what people care about as the people who sit in the marketing team. So it literally is just the way we are. I don't know how it would be anywhere else because I obviously come from an ad background where you're in this creative space and everybody's encouraged to be creative. And then I land at Nando's where, if you're going to jump from agency to a corporate, this is the place you want to be because it feels very much, still has that guts of a great creative agency as well.
Jessica, all I'm hearing as you're sort of speaking, you're touching on co-creation and the importance of sort of everybody shaping the story. And I speak a lot. I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but I just think this Gen Z is the most fascinating and scrutinized generation we have coming up next. And I think they're really they're perplexing marketers because they're a perplexing cohort. But what are you doing to sort of stay younger, relevant to younger audiences? And are there any platforms or sort of messages that are resonating with them the most right now that you may not even understand?
I mean, as a parent to a Gen Zer, it's still it's still lost on me, even though I live with one. I still battle to understand. And the thing is, I think when you reach the point of thinking you understand it, you've already lost, right? It's one of these things that you're just going to keep kind of trying to grab, and you're just never going to get there. I think what you have to do is, if you want to speak to Gen Zers, then get Gen Zers in to help, right? So don't assume as a millennial in their 40s that I know what's cool. I do think I'm a cool millennial, just by the way. But don't assume those things. So obviously we all know TikTok is the place to be, right? But don't ask established brand marketers with 15, 20 years under their belt to tell you how to be relevant on TikTok because they don't know. And at worst, what they could do is actually just land up doing more harm, right? Like showing up as the cool older uncle at the bra. We don't want to be that. So you've got to invite young people in. We do that as often as we can, but what it does require is a lot of letting go. And I think when particularly if you've been working on the brand side or the marketing side for some time, letting go of those precious things is very hard. But you've got to find a way to be able to do that without losing what's important to the brand, without kind of trying to throttle or shall we brief them with this script and then get them to edit? Like, you can't do that anymore. You've got to take some of those risks. And again, we we live in a culture where risk taking is celebrated and encouraged, and what is the worst thing that can happen? So it doesn't work, and so what? The world's moved on. The internet's moving at 15, every 15 minutes something else is cool. So you can kind of afford to make a few mistakes, and there's some really bad content we put out there, but it's all in the spirit of learning. No one's getting wrapped over the knuckles or sent to HR because they took a risk and it didn't pay out.
I think that's so important, and it speaks about having those underlying values, because if you can operate from that perspective, then it becomes a bit easier to not necessarily micromanage, but have a sense of base of, okay, this is what we stand for, go off and then allow creativity. And I just love that you gave that example with co-creation and bringing younger people in. But there's also all sorts of other stuff that's really changing the marketing industry. How is Nando's embracing tech and AI and other digital innovations to stay ahead of the curve?
Wow. AI is a tough one. I think and I speak from a personal perspective on that point, is that I fundamentally believe that Nando's is a supporter of local creativity, and AI will never replace creativity in Nando's as long as I'm sitting in this chair, just because it pushes up against everything we stand for. So I think, we dabble in AI because it helps us be more efficient at the mundane things that take up time, preventing us doing the creative stuff. So I think in that respect, it's really helpful, like post-campaign reporting, that all of that, like stuff that we have to do because, people need reports and whatever. But to have people spending too much time doing that kind of stuff takes away from the creative process. So I think AI and tech, so long as it's an enabler of freeing up time on the things that are really important, it's always going to work for us. But I just personally draw a very firm line to say we will not use AI if we can use a creative human to do that work, because it's just part of what we do, and it would fly in the face of 38 years of legacy, to be frank.
I just want to say or ask, does that go over well with the sort of other business units all throughout? Because someone in finance may not understand and think that is a very bold stance to take. We can just churn out creative with AI and it'll be half the cost. So how do you contend with all those different voices?
Again, I'm spoiled. I live in La La Land, right? I don't have a combative relationship with my finance team at all, right? We don't see marketing is not a cost center. It's an investment, right? So the business appreciates what we stand out to do. They appreciate that, the process of creativity. They appreciate that it costs money. They appreciate all of those things. I would, in the Nando's universe, I would never be put under pressure by a cost efficiency to adopt an AI program because it's going to be 60% cheaper. It doesn't work that way here. So thankfully, I don't have those. I'm very sorry for people who do. That's just not my lived experience.
Jess, that's such an amazing point of view for finance and ROI teams to have. And Senna asks the question because we obviously work in research for brands like yourselves, and it is very infrequent that we actually hear of situations where marketing teams and finance teams are aligned in the pursuit of excellence in marketing, as opposed to good enough at a reduced fee, or at a reduced investment. So I think it's really cool, and it speaks to the way you describe the culture up front. I also loved the idea of supporting teams who create good content, and understanding that does sometimes come at a risk, but being okay with that, because that's how you're going to be creative and how you're going to create things that the AI doesn't yet know about. Yeah. So it can't create that because it's not a human. So anyway, I think it's really cool. Okay, I have a little bit of a different kind of line of questioning. So Kantar globally has a report called the Restaurant Dive, and in 2025 it took a look at the key trends in your guys' industry, in restaurant and QSR. And one of the biggest themes that they found is that there's this shift towards healthier eating, both globally and in South Africa. And consumers are looking for smaller portions, they're looking for different snacking options, they're actually embracing more of a Mediterranean diet. And I know that Nando's has always positioned itself as the healthier option to its competitors, certainly in South Africa. So even in saying that, have you found that you've had to adapt your menu further for that shift?
So again, it's we never positioned ourselves as the healthier option. Our commitment to a fresh supply chain put us there, right? So because we're almost obsessed with making sure that we have the least amount of processed things across our menu, it kind of pushed us into that space already. And I think there is an expectation that there are always fresh, healthier choices on the menu. Our menu is not a static thing. We are consistently innovating, but equally so, we're consistently making better. So there may be things in the menu that have been there for, 10 years, but there is a constant process of making sure, is that the best spicy rice that we can make at this point in time? The things change, processes change, ingredients change. So we're always doing that. And I think, the health agenda is absolutely part of who we are and how we innovate, but it's not the only way we do it. It's really important for us that there are healthier choices on the menu and that those healthier choices are reflective across all price ranges, so that we're not, only providing healthier options to people who are prepared to pay a lot more. So it's a strategic decision to do it. It's not the only thing we do. We do put some sneaky spoils on the menu as well, because, people don't want to eat healthy 100% of the time. But certainly even those options on our menu are still made with amazingly, preferably local sourced, fresh ingredients as well. So it's always going to be the better choice.
Yeah, that's lovely. And that's really cool. Again, this whole baked into the culture kind of theme that we've covered in the show. And you guys also have that partnership with Vitality, the healthy dining. How's that going for you guys?
Yeah, it's again, Discovery Vitality has been a partner of ours for the longest time. It's really important for us that we keep that partnership. Again, it's a signaler of our intent, and we know that the Vitality team does a huge amount of due diligence to make sure that it's almost an external vetting or validation of the health claims and the things that we perceive to be healthy on the menu. So it is really important for us. It will always be there. I'll be the first to admit it doesn't make up a huge amount of the volume of things that people buy, but it certainly is a choice driver, because again, to the point you made earlier, is that the perception that you're going to go somewhere where there are healthier options, there is a commitment to a proper, sustainable and locally sourced supply chain. It helps, and Discovery Vitality gives us a little bit of that shortcut as well. We're always finding ways to kind of spice things up and figure out new ways to work with Vitality to make more things in our menu meet their relatively stringent criteria, and for very good reason as well.
Yeah, that's cool. We recently launched the 2025 iteration of the Mzansi report, which is a view into how consumers are behaving in South Africa across a whole bunch of different behaviors, I guess. And one of the things, which is not new to 2025, is that consumers are being really, really thoughtful in where they spend their money. And one of the things that people are cutting back on is going to restaurants, but we're finding that the amount of spend on takeaways has remained fairly similar over the past couple of years. Have you found similar trends at Nando's?
Yeah, I think the whole category is battling with frequency at the moment. People still want that experience. They're just going to do it less frequently. We don't see a lot of people dropping out of the category. We just see them using it less frequently. So it becomes a strategic consideration of, if somebody is going to choose to spend, their once a month at Nando's, how do we make sure that's the best damn experience they're going to get? Because we know that they're going to choose us over somebody else. The category isn't growing, so it's not like we're bringing in a whole bunch of new users. We literally have to steal somebody else's lunch, right? So you've got to make sure that every customer that walks into a Nando's store has the best damn experience, because next month when they need to make another choice, we want to be their first choice. So, it's one thing to use price as a lever to show value. It is, in my very modest opinion, it's the easiest lever to pull but it's also the least sustainable and the least differentiating, right? If you're going to compete on price alone, you kind of going to start circling the drain eventually. You can only get, as cheap as you can get, and then you've got nothing left to play with. So we use price as a lever when we need to, but what's more important is experience and the product. The product has just got to deliver every single time. So we are obsessed with making sure that everything on the menu is the best thing it can be.
Oh, that is like literally music to our ears. I mean, at Cantel, we're just such advocates for the idea of you create a brand perception and then you need to deliver to that through your experience. And things like pricing exist on the periphery. They are simply tools, but they should not in any way ever form the crux of who your brand is. So do love that. And I guess, so I've kind of mentioned a couple of themes that we've seen through this global study. Have there been any other trends that have caught your attention in South Africa over the past year?
Yeah, and it's not, South Africa is a wonderfully unique place in many instances, but in some instances it's also just like everywhere else, right? So, people using us in different channels, they want to have a consistent experience across any channel that they use us in, whether it's via a third-party delivery service, whether it's click and collect, whether it's via drive-through, whether it's via dine-in, they want a consistent experience. So it's increasingly difficult to deliver against that because a dine-in experience and a drive-through experience are two very different things. And people have expectations that they're consistent, right? So managing those things and figuring out how to deliver a more laid back, potentially slightly slower, more immersive experience in a dine-in occasion versus drive-through, where people, quite frankly, want their food very quickly because they don't want to be sitting in their car in a queue or being parked in the car park waiting for stuff. Those are the things that we grapple with. Digital ordering and all sorts of things, loyalty programs. Do we do it? Do we not do it? We don't have a loyalty program. Should we? We don't know. It's picking up in trends, and we know in South Africa it's very important from a loyalty point of view. Not necessarily in our category, but certainly in groceries and pharmaceuticals and all sorts of things. It's really important. But these are the things that are, as much as we're having conversations here, I'm having conversations with my global counterparts on the same things. At the end of the day, a human is a human. So we have far more in common than we do differences. So a lot of those global trends are applicable here. Value at the moment is important, and redefining what value means to a customer, in a lunchtime occasion. These are all things that are pretty consistent, and that we've been having it for about 3 years. So they don't change dramatically over time.
You touched on two things there that really stood out for me that we've been having conversations with our clients about too, which is rewards programs. Do I, don't I? And if I'm going to, how do I actually make sure that it is a good idea, as opposed to just being, I don't know, some sort of like price driven, unlock certain price savings, and then basically it turns into a pricing program rather than a loyalty or rewards type of program. So that one we've heard a lot of. And the other one was relationships with the delivery companies or the couriers and things, because that's very hard. That being part of your experience, and yet actually it exists outside of Nando's. Must be quite a challenge.
It is a challenge, I think, and it's also, we're also having our constant conversations about, do we want to deliver chicken, or do we want to make chicken? Like, we can do one really, really well. Delivering chicken is not our forte. We're not a logistics company. So in those instances, you've got the likes of Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery that are good at doing that. Again, it comes to having to let go of some of those things, and how do we wrap up a brand experience that's not reliant necessarily on a delivery person, but that's maybe expressed through packaging or through the ordering process. There's other ways to kind of embed a brand experience in those things, because the third-party aggregators are pretty ubiquitous, and it's a difficult thing to get right. So again, it's the things that we battle with, and that at some point in this day and age, with the customers we deal with and the channels and all sorts of things, you have to cede control and you have to compromise on some things. we don't want to compromise on the quality of the product, and we don't want to compromise on the best possible experience. So if we can keep those two things, if it means that we have to let go of something else, then that's the thing that we've got to do to grow.
Jessica, you're describing sort of like what we like unpacking on the show, which is what are the ins and outs of building like these truly iconic brands. And you're speaking about this, all the considerations that you have to make internally. But us as the consumer love it. I must say, the competition in this category is beyond lit. And I like it, just no pun intended. But I want to ask you, how do you, Nando's are operating on their own lane, obviously, iconic brand, but are you aware of the competition? Do they ever do something where you're like, oh, that was good? And then, yeah.
Yeah, we do. I think we were very fortunate, all those years back to kind of create this path for how brands in our category could go to market and could do their comms and all sorts of things. And a lot of people, whether inside or outside of the category, have kind of caught up, right? So they've kind of adopted it. And now it's like, it's the way that things are done in the category, as opposed to, that competitor's stealing, right? You got like drinks brands doing it, and, Checkers does a little bit of it. And it's amazing. But it also keeps us on our toes, because we realize that, this isn't a Nando's thing. This is a marketing thing. Like, once you have kind of run your path, maybe we need to look at a different way to do something. Maybe we need to switch up. Maybe we need to do something else. And it's great. And people must, we're all for competition, and, we stand very strongly on what we do and how we do it, and the legacy, that we've built doing it that way. That doesn't mean we're inflexible to change or inflexible to do things differently, or to experiment and try some new things. So it's a great place to be. We love the competition. It's fun. Customers love it. We get bag loads of, free share of voice for it. It's lovely. I mean, you don't have to pay for that kind of exposure. It's fabulous.
And we know as the consumer that you guys did that first. So I think I love leaning on that. We know you did that first.
Yeah, it's great, because that's who we were a couple of years ago. We were that cheeky challenger brand, and now we're big, and now we're national, and we're global, and we've grown up a little bit. So when you grow up, you need to make space for new people, and new people keep you on your toes.
Oh, I love that. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a really cool conversation. I'm feeling suitably inspired. I really enjoyed it. So thank you. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We would love it if you want to leave us a comment or a review. You can subscribe to get the podcast through Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, so you don't miss an episode. And we will catch you next time.